Hi, panel 3 looks at key trends and key players, so the format is a bit different. I will leave it to the chairperson to tell you more about the format as well as the theme. Now, let me introduce briefly the chairperson, Peh Shing Huei. Shing Huei is a journalist and author, and he has spent 15 years in journalism. He was a Straits Times news editor and the China bureau chief. So his book on China won the Singapore Literature Prize in 2016, and his latest book on Philip Yeo, one of our top civil servants in Singapore, is shortlisted for the Singapore Book Award 2017. So let us put our hands together and welcome Shing Huei and our 5 speakers.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. It's always good to be part of the AJF Forum. I've been involved for a few years now, and it's always nice to be back. I hope everyone had a great lunch. So ready for this great session that we're going to be having here. 5 great speakers coming up. So we have quite a few to go around, so I'm not going to waste time. I think it's useful for us to be hearing from practitioners and talk about how fake news have affected their work, what kind of guiding principles they've come up with, what are some of the challenges they face. We have a fairly diverse group among our panelists here, from the traditional media, from the new media, as social media players, as well as a fact-checking platform. So nice mix here, and look forward to really engaging session. So perhaps I'll just let the speakers themselves introduce who they are very quickly before Zakir is going to get the ball rolling. So Zakir, why don't you start?
Hi, I'm Zakir Hussain. I've been political editor at the Straits Times for about a year. And I'm going to share a bit about how we check facts.
Hi, I'm Martino. I'm the managing editor of Mothership. This blog has been around for the past 4 years. So I'll be sharing with you our challenges as well on how we face fake news. Yeah.
Thanks, Shing Huei. My name is also Shing Huei as well, but it's my Chinese name. So every time Carol says Shing Huei, I just perk up. But my English name is Alvin Tan, and I am the head of public policy for Facebook in Southeast Asia. And I hope to share about our approach to authenticity, but also to learn what we can do in collaboration with partners here today.
Hi everyone, my name is Irene Liu, and I am the APAC lead for Google News Lab, so covering all of Asia but based in Singapore. And I was a reporter for 10 years at Reuters and the South China Morning Post, and a newspaper in the United States. And today I'd like to talk about what Google and Google News Lab are doing to help support journalists to fight misinformation.
Hi, my name is Aji. I represent Indonesian anti-hoax community. At this event, I would like to present about how we are doing the fact-checking and also beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Just before Zakir starts, a word on this format that we're having. Essentially, the idea is 20 slides and not more than 20 seconds per slide. But I think we can afford to be a bit more lax today and not be so strict. But there's a 7-minute guideline for every speaker. So the whole idea is that you don't overrun. So please, lady and gentlemen, try to keep to it. Okay, Zakir, over to you.
Okay, hi. I thought I'd just go through several broad points on how we at a main newspaper in Singapore kind of ensure that we try not to get duped. I'm going to talk a bit about how we still emphasize certain principles about getting basics right, but at the same time, increasingly, we find we have to report on fake news, even if it's not newsworthy in itself. Because media outlets, I think, have a role to play in educating readers about fake news and also calling out and fixing disinformation or falsehoods that are out there. I'm not going to read this out, but I think it's sort of, traditionally, most old school journalists, you try and get to the source of events, get primary quotes and so on. But it isn't so easy. And even when you do that, even when getting accounts from 2 different people, you get very different versions of the truth. Here's what we try and emphasize. get it right from the horse's mouth, but at the same time, you have to verify the accuracy of information. And increasingly, I think you have to investigate the source of information. So if it's a survey that's being done, check if the outlet that's doing it's credible. You know, are they actually polling real people or bots online and so on? And as far as possible, try and counter-check information against what's out there. I think media outlets also have to be transparent about what sort of information they put out. And if you conduct a survey, you know, you post your methods. You try and get all sides of the story. And unfortunately, I think because a lot of news, I think a lot of us get our news feeds from Facebook and other sources, right? Increasingly, I think there's a need to be more skeptical, and if something's too good to be true, then it probably isn't. I'm going to talk about a few examples when we were caught out by, or nearly caught out, you know. Mr. Lee Kuan Yew was very ill, and I think about 10 days or so before his death, there were all these hoaxes going around, you know, and that were widely shared on social media that he had died. Looks real, right? It's not. We had our doubts, and you know, it's easy with tools to kind of doctor what looks like an original site. It turns out what happened was a student had doctored the release, and this is some telltale signs to look out for. But quite a few outlets were taken in. Even CNN, right, which issued a half retraction. And the person who perpetrated the hoax was warned. Increasingly on social media, what's normally not a news item also becomes news. So it looks like, you know, there's a collapse in a public housing estate in Singapore, and folks started chipping in about how the quality of our public houses is, you know, deteriorating and so on. Action needs to be taken. Turns out it was just an optical illusion. But we reported that it's a hoax. And I think what we've done increasingly is kind of try and educate readers about how hoaxes can get called out, you know, and are clarified. Looks real as well, but sometimes folks can, it's very easy with technology to kind of doctor real reports and alter headlines or create false. So, in a straight article about the president of Singapore, you know, sending condolence messages to the Thai king, I think, on the death of his father, gets doctored to lighthearted. Yep. So we had to correct it. We actually had our social media editor write a report on how, you know, things can get doctored and what folks should look out for in trying to assess whether something is true or not online. I think apart from folks trying to stoke, you know, hatred or racial divisions, there's a possibility that some foreign news sites could try and influence Singaporean sentiments on foreign policy issues and so on. And I think, like Sharon said last night, you know, these fake news tendencies have been around for long. They're now more pronounced with social media. And sometimes they even try and cast doubts on the veracity of what mainstream media in various societies report. One hot issue, just to give an example, is Singapore-China relations. And I think what some of my colleagues have done is to set out facts and maybe just even flag false claims and address myths or, you know, misperceptions that are out there. I'm not going to read this out, but yeah. So I think going forward, I think media outlets do have to work with folks at Facebook, Google, and even other media outlets to kind of call out false reports and rumors that might otherwise be downplayed. But at the same time, I think we have a role to play in debunking fake news. One thing we've started in the past 2 years, but that has gained traction, is this thing called Ask ST, ST for the Straits Times, where readers or, you know, viewers on social media pose questions, and we select some of the more prominent questions and get our correspondents or senior colleagues to try and answer them. I think it's also important for media outlets to explain facts to readers and play a role in, I think, educating them on how to spot fake news. or even to spot disinformation. And I think in this respect, readers have a role in terms of giving feedback on issues and maybe even posing questions and turning to mainstream media outlets for answers. This is just a graphic showing how I think we all hope that fake news can be sent to the dustbin, but I think we still have a long way to go before we get there. Okay.
Thank you, Zakir. Excellent with the timekeeping. Fantastic. Yeah. So Martino, you have a hard act to follow. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's still awake. It's a very intensive session with so many speakers, and it's after lunch. So I have a confession to make. I have no professional journalism experience, but I run this popular blog in Singapore. It's called Mothership. It's read by 2 million people every month, and many of them are quite young. So I'll begin with how Mothership started. I'll also address, I think, two questions as raised by Carol. And has fake news changed the game for us? And do we have our own guiding principles to address the issue of fake news? But here's another question you must be wondering. How did a couple of regular Singaporeans, without any support from the 2 major news companies, create one of the most popular news sites in Singapore? Perhaps it was luck and timing. The online space 4 years ago was dominated by social political sites, with quite a number of them peddling angry political views with unverified information. When the founders and I started Mothership, we just wanted a happier website. So let's call it BuzzFeed with Singapore characteristics. Our site was interested in politics, but not all the time. And who says you can't have fun, talking about politics in Singapore? Mothership became popular, riding on the wave of a few major trends in Singapore. Our articles went viral as Singaporeans used Facebook as their dominant social media platform. Our accessible content also engages Singaporeans who are reading most of their content from mobile devices. When I spoke to a friend from Google, a friend of Irene's, his take is that we at Mothership, right, simply succeeded by doing things the typical Singaporean way, by being cheaper, better, faster than our competitors. So has fake news changed the game for Mothership? I think yes and no. Like what Cherian, the father of AJF, said in the keynote address last night, there's always been disinformation. And disinformation has been prevalent in the local online space for a while. Prime Minister Lee called the online space a Wild West a few years ago. Unlike some online sites, Mothership did not rush to publish and spread such disinformation. I think like what Zakir mentioned just now, many senior civil servants here will remember the doctored government website that was circulating online, announcing the death of the late Lee Kuan Yew. So what did we do? We verified with the government officials first before writing about it. Unlike sophisticated fake news circulating these days, it was also easy to check and ask our IT expert friends. But the fake news phenomenon has changed the game for Mothership in terms of our reputation. As a digital-only news platform, we have to constantly earn our credibility. We are judged by our latest work. Our name and humorous tone may not always match the gravity of the situation. One of the first questions I get asked most of the time is whether Mothership is linked to mother care baby products. Our tongue-in-cheek tone has also resulted in many complaints from government officials to me, which can be grouped into 3 categories. Can you not make light of this serious matter? Not everything is funny, Or can you try to be more serious? So yes, the issue of fake news, right, have changed the game for Mothership in some ways, but it has also not changed the game in other ways as well. So what are our guiding principles for Mothership? I think one of our guiding principles is the fact that we have to be aware of our own limitations. Unlike Straits Times, Mothership is not a paper of record in Singapore. And neither is Mothership an online site of activists who are trying to be like journalists. We are an online commentaries and news aggregator platform, and we complement, I think, other news platforms. With just 12 editorial staff, we still lack the news gathering resources of mainstream media. So we have to learn how to operate at a fraction of the cost by the mainstream media, and with a better use also of social media networks and a better understanding of the type of content that matter to Singaporean readers. So this Joseph Schooling, our first Olympic gold medalist, I'm sure everyone has a Joseph Schooling story. So here's ours. You know, we cannot afford to send anyone to cover him in Brazil, of course. But we managed to obtain, I think, the only exclusive with Joe when he returned to Singapore last year. So why did Joe choose us? I think first, we built the trust with him and his team over the years of our fair coverage with him. And second, I guess our way of doing things excites him. He was probably getting bored, you know, hearing all the questions about his Olympic winning race and how he won. So our approach to dealing with news, right, called for a different and a more collaborative attitude. We did not feel like we were competing with the mainstream media for the latest news on Joe. We understand that the online space, filled with Joe's schooling stories, will complement Mothership's coverage on him. We are aware of the social media reactions. We did not ask him questions about his achievements. We assume our audience know. And knowing that an iPhone probably functions like a diary to the millennials, we asked him to review the contents of his iPhone instead. So that's our story with him. Another key principle we remember is that Mothership is constantly in beta mode. And Mothership continues to learn, make mistakes, adapt, and improve. So this means that we are sometimes a victim of fake news. Just a week ago, Mothership made the biggest mistake in our 4-year history. It was the eve of National Day. I checked my phone, and there were a lot of missed calls, you know, from numbers I don't recognize. Was there a political scandal? Did someone resign? Unfortunately, we had our own scandal. So in our rush to publish, right, we wrongly associate potential presidential candidate Mr. Saleh Marikan to a fake Facebook page. We double-checked internally, investigated, and realized that we have made a big mistake. A representative from Facebook Singapore, Alvin's colleague perhaps, also helpfully informed me about the fake page that night. We apologized to Mr. Saleh, took down the article within hours, and posted an apology on our page. After National Day, we visited Mr. Saleh and apologized to him in person. So what are the right lessons to draw from this? We learned that our editorial processes, especially in terms of vetting and editing, can be improved further. Our internal checks failed. On this occasion, we made a mistake in not verifying with the source properly. However, we also hope that our readers appreciate that we address and rectify our mistakes immediately. We are transparent about our mistake, and we take responsibility immediately when things go wrong. I hope we can recover from this setback. Finally, as content producers, right, we cannot take our role for granted. And like politicians in democracies, we have to renew our social compact with our audience constantly. We have to produce fair and balanced content that inform and entertain. Sometimes we forget that the content we produce do not value add to our audience lives. We assume that readers read us because of who we are. We do not think much of our audience. We use our craft to ask and answer the wrong questions. But our audience should read us, right, because our content is relevant. They should read us because our content inspires. And it's up to us to make sure that reason and truth continues to be relevant in this post-truth world. This means that all of us here have to find new ways of connecting and engaging with our different audience, one social media platform at a time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martino. Good timing as well. So from the new media, let's move on to one of the tech giants. So over to you, Alvin.
Thanks, Martino. So talking about another organization in beta mode, we are very much in beta mode as well, and that's why we're here, eager to also learn and also to get to work with partners. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our approach to authenticity, but I'll start with Facebook's mission. And for those of you who are eagerly engaged in your phones, please either be focused on Facebook or Instagram. And then you're fine. But otherwise, please focus on my slides. So, we changed our mission recently. I mean, originally it was to give people the power to make the world more open and connected. We're now very focused on the concept of community. So it's now giving people the power to build community and to bring the world closer together. And one of these types of communities is building an informed community. It's building an informed community. And we know people want to see accurate information online, on Facebook. I mean, all of us here want to. And people constantly tell us that they don't want to see stories that are misleading, that are spammy, or that are sensational. So false news and hoaxes, we acknowledge, are harmful to our community, and it is an antithesis to our goal to build an informed community. But what is important, and that's what Sharon had mentioned last night, was that all of us have a role to play. All of us have a role to play, be it tech companies, media companies, newsrooms, or classrooms. But for Facebook, what have we been trying to do? You know, what steps have we taken in this regard? So there are a couple of things that we have been doing, and a couple of things that we can do better. The first is we are looking to, and we are working on disrupting the economic incentives for false news. And the majority of false news are financially motivated. Majority are financially motivated. So we want to disrupt it. We want to make it as difficult or as financially non-economical for people to spread false news. The second is building products into your Facebook newsfeed, into the product itself, to help reduce the distribution of false or inaccurate information. And the third pillar is important, is because, again, as what Sharon had mentioned yesterday, it's helping people to be informed, helping us to be more critical of what we see online. So I'll go into some of these in detail. So there are low-quality pages that are linked to Facebook. You see it in your newsfeed sometimes, right? And these kinds of pages have little substantive content. They are disruptive, they are shocking, or sometimes they are malicious kinds of ads, right? They are low-quality pages. Now, we've rolled out a new update a couple of months ago so that people will see less of these kinds of content and ads like this. And a new policy was launched last year as well so that we would prevent such kind of content or such ads to appearing on your newsfeed. And we've also reviewed about hundreds and thousands of such pages using the help of artificial intelligence to see what kind of similar kinds of pages exist on the web and how we can reduce its distribution onto Facebook. Quite similar to what Sharon had mentioned last night, with regards to like Google and downranking. And we also know that many times false news is pervaded by clickbait, right? So there's a sensational headline, but then once you click, it's a different experience. So we attack clickbait. We want to reduce the distribution of clickbait. People tell us they don't like clickbait. And so we want to determine what kind of stories would have clickbait headlines. And we want to reduce the distribution of these kinds of stories so they're downranked in your newsfeed. You see them less, if you even see them at all. Clickbait headlines typically withhold or exaggerate information. They withhold information and exaggerate information. So we want to have less of that. And we were talking, Ulrich and I were talking earlier today, and based on his studies that you're going to send later on, we think that sharing context and other perspectives are important. So we are testing this related articles across, first with a couple of countries, but across the Facebook platform, across the world, to share under your newsfeed or a particular post related articles that might give you a different perspective of an issue. Right? So you make that judgment, you make that critical analysis. And of course, improve reporting. We're working with third-party fact-checking organizations. We've worked here with Pak Aji as well, but also with other organizations here in this room, including Verifiles, and other third-party fact-checkers to help us on the back end. But in terms of reporting, what happens in this regard is you mark or report a story as false, and then it goes to a third-party fact-checker. And then, we could either label that as a false news, or we could say, okay, these are the other kinds of related articles that might give you a different perspective. Now, that is an imperfect solution, because of course, there are criticisms that even third-party fact-checkers are non-partisan. So that's not a silver bullet, and we are aware of that. And then the other vein is news literacy. We want to improve the ability and give people the ability to learn about what constitutes false news, right? And so we have rolled out public service announcements in Indonesia, in the Philippines recently. We're going to do that in Singapore and Malaysia very shortly on tips to spot false news. And these are going to appear routinely on your Facebook feeds as well. And we've worked with different organizations, including Splice is here as well, Media Literacy Council, to help to promote and to give journalists and publishers the tools to be able to surface more authentic content on Facebook. Examples include the Asia Pacific News Literacy Group, where we provide funding for our partners. And then the Facebook Journalism Project, where there's collaborative development with publishers. We provide training and tools, as I mentioned, for journalists and also for people. And finally, these are just a snapshot of the initiatives that we're rolling out or have rolled out over the course of the year in the Asia Pacific region. Most of the countries are covered, but I'd like to provide an open invitation that if you would love to partner us, we are absolutely open to discuss further, to see how we can both work together to curb false news. But finally, in the 25 seconds, I really wanted to emphasize that media literacy, as last night's keynote had mentioned, is absolutely critical, and we are committed to advancing that. I'm a member of the Media Literacy Council, as well as Carol and many others in the room here, I think, and we would love to do more on those fronts. So I think that's it. 4 seconds to go. Cool, thanks. Thanks.
Thank you, Alvin. Excellent, excellent. So from Facebook, we're going to move on to Google. Over to you, Irene.
Hello, everyone. How are you all doing? All right? Everyone's asleep. Yeah, everyone's leaning back. Your eyes are half closed. So in my 6 minutes and 51 seconds, I just want to quickly talk about Google News Lab and the initiatives that not only News Lab, but Google as a company are doing to try to counter misinformation and elevate journalism. To start, I just want to introduce Google News Lab for those of you who are not aware of it. It is new in the region. We actually just launched this year here, but the initiative has been around for a couple of years. And when we talk about the News Lab, we start with Google's mission, which is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So for the journalists in this room, it's quite a familiar mantra and motto, because journalists have been doing the same thing a long time before Google ever started. In fact, since humans began telling stories to each other and communicating and informing each other, this has been a critical part of how the world communicates. We really think at Google that in order to create a more informed world, journalists and technologists have to work together. Now, maybe it's because I was a journalist for 10 years, but I am perhaps quite biased. I think journalists have a huge role to play in countering misinformation and informing the public. The core of journalism and the brand is reputation, verified information, those tools and techniques that really seek truth and hold those to power to account. And so part of what we're trying to do at Google is to make sure that your voice rises in this world of multiple platforms, technologies, everyone connected to devices. It's just a very noisy place for information. And so journalists have an important role to play in terms of providing that voice that people can go to and can trust. And so that's why Google News Lab was founded, and that's why I'm here. Google News Lab is an organization that is comprised mostly of former journalists, so we have a vested interest in the industry and truly believe in the mission. And we do our work in a number of focus areas: trust and verification, data journalism, immersive storytelling, and inclusive storytelling. Now today, given the topic of this conference, we'll talk about trust and verification and how we work to support journalism and fact-checking communities to make sure that high-quality information is elevated. We do this in a number of ways. So Google is a big technology company, and not only do we have search, which is how most of us actually interact with Google, but we have lots of tools, everything from maps to search to all kinds of interesting new technologies related to machine learning, photos. How many of you use Google Photos? Raise your hand. How many of you use Google Maps?
How many use Google spreadsheets and Google Docs? Right, quite a few of you, right? So the thing that's interesting is that all the tools that we're talking about have a role to play in helping to verify information online. And so one of the things that we do as Google News Lab is we go to newsrooms and work with journalists to teach people how to use Google tools for that work. In addition to that, we kind of serve as ambassadors for the news industry to Google, knowing that you all use these tools to help do your reporting, to help verify information online, to do fact checking. When we hear feedback from you about how the tool works and helps and how it could be improved, we take that information and that feedback and take it back to the engineers and the product development teams within the company. We are your ambassadors. So that's one of the things that we hope to continue to do as we grow this work. So we do newsroom trainings. We also have trainings online. News Lab is a small but mighty team, and so we really want to make sure that everyone has access to these tools if possible. And so you can see that we have verification courses and others on the Google News Lab website. We also work in partnership. We are not a newsroom, and we know that the work, the innovation, and the heavy lifting when it comes to fighting misinformation is going to come from you all, from the journalists. And so one thing that we want to do in supporting that work is to help bring that community together. What's incredible, I've been in this role for about 7 months now, and what's incredible to me is just traveling around the region and seeing all the really interesting initiatives that different newsrooms, different developers, and community groups such as Mafindo in Indonesia are coming up with their own innovative strategies and just kind of hacking together at the problem to try to fix it. So part of what we want to do is actually help to build that community and get people talking to each other so they can share techniques, they can share tools, they can share code, and really, really build a larger community around this work. So that's what we do. We've done this not only in Asia, but also in Europe and in the United States. We've done trainings around Asia, and we continue to do that kind of training and hold forums to really try to help get people talking, get people sharing and collaborating. This is just an example of the kinds of trainings we do. We do smaller trainings. The top right is actually Mafindo, which we did a training with them in Jakarta, and then we do larger journalist trainings around as well. And the last thing I'll talk about in the last minute I have is about how, from a technological standpoint, fact-checking and high-quality information can appear in search. Now, as I talked about, it's a very noisy world, and so if you all are doing the hard work of actually verifying and fact-checking, we want to make sure that that hard work is seen by the people, right? When people are online, you hope that if they find something that seems a little sketchy, that they will go and try to seek answers for themselves. And a lot of times what they will do is they will actually go to search, right? So we want to make sure that when they take that step, when they exercise their skepticism, that when they search, the truth, high quality information is elevated to the top. And so the way we do that is by making sure that there's a platform for fact-check content to actually be able to be surfaced. And so for those of you who are doing fact-checking, you can actually implement something that is called the fact-check tag. And it appears in Google News and on search now. And it's both on desktop and on mobile. And the way you do it is simply by implementing the claim review markup, which you can find out more about on schema.org, or through something called the Share the Facts widget, which is not only in English, but in several other languages as well, and we're continuing to develop it in more languages. So the last message I would say is that there's a lot of work to do, and we want to work with you. So please feel free to reach out to me. I know that they're making my contact information available, and it's also right here. If you are working on an initiative and you want to collaborate, get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irene. Well, this panel is really well behaved. I can't believe it. Everyone is pretty much keeping to the 7-minute rule. So, Ajay, you've got some pressure, so keep up to it.
Okay, hi everybody. I think I'm, as the last person who speak in this panel, I will steal 1 minute. Sorry for that. I'm going to deliver my slides. It's about fact-checking and beyond Indonesia stories. So we coming from a community called Mavindo, Indonesian's anti-hoax community, which is actually quite new. We are started since last December. And our mission is to fight fake news and also to empower people how to use the social media in positive way. And we also coined the term turn back hoax. We are a non-profit and independent and neutral, using crowdsourced and crowd-funded efforts. We start receiving fundings, but that cannot interfere our independence. So we are now at the moment present at 12 cities nationwide with around more than 200 active volunteers. We have 3 group discussion on Facebook with more than 100,000 members. And since July last month, we started Mavindo office with full-time professionals and with full-time fact-checkers to complement the volunteers' efforts. So Indonesia is where such a complex countries with a lot of ethnics, more than 1,000, and 5 big religions and many institutions of faith meet with the social media. Alvin told me that now the users of Facebook itself reach 150 million. So there are a lot of benefits of having such technologies, but we have also some problems that I'm going to tell you that we have several problems now. The first one is the potential of horizontal conflict which disrupts the racial harmony. So last year we saw several holy places burned by angry mob, accelerated by hoax, and also a man was killed this year because he was suspected as child abductor. That was the story was circulated in the messaging apps. And also we saw a lot of discord between families and friends. We have a problem also in health issues and financial issues. There are several Ponzi scheme business that try to get members using social media. So we believe that at least 3 factors why in Indonesia hoax are very easy to spread. The first one is low literacy. The second one is polarizations or echo chambers because of politics and ethnic religious issues. And the third one is some of media are partisans because of the effect of media conglomerations. People leaving some mainstream media and fall into rogue online websites. So this way I would like to tell you about how our community fight hoax. We have 4 main activities. The first one is the hoax busting or fact checking. The second one is the public campaign and literacy educations. The third one is advocacy. The fourth one is to convene people from different ethnic religions to have to sit together and have a discussion and talks about these matters. For the hoax busting or fact checking department, we are using Facebook groups to have discussions. There are so many volunteers, and everybody can just submit their clarifications, which will be approved by our moderators, which is full-time fact checkers. After that, the result will be put on our website, turnback.id, and we are also developing web apps and mobile apps in data turnback.id. At the moment for fact checking, we are also partnering with several institutions. The first one is Social Media Enterprise. We already have a lot of talks with Facebook, Alvin and Friends, and Twitter Indonesia. We already start collaboration with Irene from Google News Lab. We are going to implement fact check tech for Indonesian contents, and also we are now already being YouTube fact tech YouTube flagger, trusted flagger for flagging videos that contains hoaxes. And also we are collaborating with Press Council, journalist associations, with the Ministry of Communication and Informations, which has a movement called National Movement of how to use internet wisely. And also we are going to make a close collaboration with Indonesian cyber media associations. And also we also work partnering with some other communities. We also started making a clearinghouse on specific topics, for example, for anti-corruptions, for radicalism, because you know the ISIS is already in front of our doors. Also health issues, collaborating with Indonesian physician associations, because health issues is quite important, and so many victims of that. And financial issues, yeah, we are going to have a collaboration with Financial Service Authority. And for specific regions that we see that it may have a potential horizontal conflict, we are going to set a kind of clearinghouse for specific, for example, in the West Kalimantan. The second one is the public campaign and literacy educations. I think the term is pre-bang, yeah, just like Professor Josh said yesterday. So we try to engage the people, enter the schools, enter the mosques, enter the church, to have a discussions about this, how to raise awareness on how to use the social media in more positive way, and how to know the danger of spreading hoaxes. We also present in several public campaign on several major cities, especially on car videos on Sunday, where people gather. So we try to make this campaign happier, yeah. And also we try to engage with several communities because we believe that fighting hoax is not only sufficient with using fact only, but we have to drive the hoax with good stories or good news, yeah, which the communities have a lot of them, but some of them are hidden. So we need to make sure that the communities they are well trained in writing, so then their story could be circulated not only at local but international. And this is my public campaign last Saturday. So please enjoy. But please be advised, don't dance. We did it in a small town in Central Java, which happens to be my town. Okay, that's it. I broke my leg during that campaign, but yeah, I was very excited, so that's no problem. The last one is convening, yeah, because we need to break the artificial wall because of the fake news. We need to break the echo chambers, and how we do it? We convene people, especially the religious leaders, the leaders from communities, to sit together and to talk. So the bottom line is that we have a democracy. We have a very good democracy in Indonesia. But how we use this democracy without using lies? We need to compete. If we need to make a competition, then do it without using hoaxes. So I think that's my presentations, and you are free to copy these presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aji. Thank you very much. So that leaves us with quite a bit of time for good dialogue. So anyone's ready to fire the first question, please. We have mics across the ballroom. I see someone right at the left-hand corner there. Please identify yourself, where you're from, and let us know if you're directing the question to any one particular member of the panel. Thanks.
Okay, hi. Hi, I'm Siang from Singapore, one of the fellows this year for the AJF. So maybe this will be directed more to Facebook and to Google. So on social media platforms, we know that our feed is quite personalized. So you can hide certain things, and you might not subscribe or follow certain news sites. So how do you fight misinformation when people don't subscribe to sites or they unfollow certain friends that might be able to provide information that can counter hoaxes or fake news, if Facebook is so personalized in that way?
So I think this is a question for Facebook, right? Well, thanks for that question. And you're absolutely right. We wanted to give our community the ability to choose what they want to see first. And so there are many tools, right? So if you don't like a certain piece of content, if you don't like a piece of content from your relative or something, annoying relative, you can just say, I want to see this less. If you like to see something from your favorite sports teams, then you'll say, see first. So I think that's where the news feed, you're talking about news feed, that's what we call news feed values, right? Making sure that you want to see the kinds of content that are most relevant to you, and that the content is typically shown, the content that's typically shown is from your friends and family, the closest circles that you have. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, one of the things that we are trying to do is also with regards to content that could be inauthentic, we are rolling out this related articles feature that might provide different contexts and to surface different contexts and different kinds of news sources that might help you to understand the issue from a broader perspective.
I really can't comment about a feed, and I don't think that Alvin would want me to. But for Google, I can say that with search, when people are coming to us to search, they're looking for information. And so, pretty much anyone can post to the internet nowadays. The tools are incredibly easy. As I mentioned, it's a very noisy place. What we do with the fact check tag and with our efforts at Google News Lab is to elevate voices and information from credible sources. So journalists, I think that and as a company, we believe journalism has a very strong role to play in that, and also trusted fact-checking communities such as Turnback Hoax and Mafindo. So what we try to do is support those efforts, whether through its technical assistance, training, convening, and through the technology of things like fact check tag, so basically if someone implements fact check tag and we know who they are and we trust their methods and their tools, what that means is that that information will be elevated higher. And one thing that we really haven't talked about today, but I think we've talked about throughout the days, is the importance of labels, right? So that's why the fact check tag is important, because when you search, if we are showing and exposing an article that has been using the fact check tag, it actually says fact check on it. So that signals to the person who's looking for the information that there has been extra due diligence put into this piece of information. And so informing the reader, letting them know and signaling to them that someone, a news organization, a fact-checking community, has done that due diligence and has gone to the trouble of actually tagging it for Google will help the reader to be able to get the information they're seeking. Now, the important part of this is that they need to be seeking high-quality information. And that's where news literacy and other parts of the equation come in.
Thank you. Lady over here on the right-hand side.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Tashi, and I'm from Bhutan. My question is to Mr. Alvin. As it's evident that most of the panelists here claim that social media site owners should be responsible in curbing fake news, I want to know how Facebook play its role in curbing fake news. And the other question is it possible to track anonymous accounts on Facebook? And did Facebook ever receive requests from government, institutions, and individuals to reveal anonymous accounts, and how does Facebook respond to that? Thank you so much.
This is like a Facebook panel. But using Facebook Live, I watched, I was looking after my 3-year-old last night, and I watched the keynote. And so I saw your question, and so I was prepared for that question. So thank you for using Facebook Live while I could watch over my 3-year-old. Yeah, so I think I have at least explained a little bit about our approach toward curbing the spread of false news on our platform in my presentation. But I thought that the question that you raised last night, and I think Cherian said, hey, there's a Facebook guy coming tomorrow, you should ask that question. So yeah, we have an authentic identity policy on Facebook. So if you had a false name or an inaccurate name or inauthentic name, it violates our policies, and most likely your account will be taken down. So a good example is I had a friend whose surname was P-O-O, Poo. And in many cultures, that was an offensive name, right? Yeah, but that's really his name. So that was before I joined Facebook, and they took down his account, saying that that's an inauthentic account. You can't use vulgarities for your name. So Facebook had asked him to, please show please show evidence that that is in fact your name. So he showed, I think his driver's license or something along those lines, and then we reinstated his account. Another example that I like to quote is we had somebody quite popular in using Facebook who posted with a very prolific regularity, like maybe 5 to 6 per hour or something along those lines, and without any context, right? So unfortunately, our spam filters had taken down that person, and that person was pretty influential. But because our spam filters thought that it was inauthentic, so we do have that, and the reason why we have authentic identity policies is that we wanted, we found that if you use your authentic identity, you're more likely to behave more civilly, or is there such a word, civilly? More civil online, and to stand by your identity. So that's one point. With regards to government requests, we have a government request report or transparency report. I know Google and other folks in the industry also have that. So you could go online. We publish it every quarterly or so, which details how many times certain governments ask us for data or ask us to produce some sort of data, and how many times we have produced some form of data. Yeah.
Since everyone on this panel has quoted Cherian, I think we should give him a chance to ask a question now.
Thanks so much, Peh. This question is about the Indonesian case, the anti-hoax movement for Septiaji. You mentioned that one of your partners is the Ministry for Information, if I'm not wrong. Can you share with us how you work with a government agency while still maintaining your credibility? Because I think that many of our countries will be very wary about working with government. I'm sure you've found a way to do it that protects your integrity. How do you do it?
Yeah, we are joined in a national movement for using internet wisely with other communities, which is coordinated by the Ministry of Communication and Informations. But we are strictly, we cannot accept funding from government. So there's thing that we are trying to make ourselves independent and neutral. I think that's the way we do. Is it enough?
I thought the best thing about government is that they have money.
Sorry?
I thought the most valuable thing about government that they can offer to civil society is money. So if you don't need their money, what do you actually need from them?
Yeah, I tell you the secret, yeah, only for this forum, yeah. Some people from governments try to give us some donation, which is quite high, but we reject that. So we choose to start from small, from some communities, but we are free to do anything what we would like to say. So, for example, when we try to make a declarations, the government give us a room like this to have the declarations, but we choose to make our declaration in quite a small coffee shops. Yeah, that's the thing that we are doing. But for example, if we have a meeting, so to have, for example, for education literacy, of course we will join them as long as it will not interfere our principles.
Thank you. Gentleman in front here.
Hi, I'm Ulrich. Hello, I'm Ulrich Ecker from the University of Western Australia. Sorry, it's kind of a Facebook question again. We had a chat earlier, and it's nice to see that social media sites, IT sites, Google, etc., are sort of stepping up to the plate and taking some responsibility, that realizing they're part of the problem, so they need to be part of the solution, right? Just using Google as an example, if you typed in women are into Google, one of the first hits you got only a year ago was the word evil, right? The same with Jews and so on. If you do it now, that has changed, and so credit to you for making those changes. The question is, how far can it go? Because I had a chat to you, Alvin, earlier, that it's about trusting the sources of the corrections as well. So if you put a Snopes fact check on there, people might not trust that and say, oh, that's a biased fact checking, right? So to what extent must sites like Facebook, like Google, which people trust, right? People trust Google to give them the facts. People trust Facebook. To what extent do they need to step up even more and maybe have, you know, a Facebook fact check who says, okay, we've taken all these other fact check sites, and now our view on this, our digest of all those different fact checking sites is that this is false news, and then starting to maybe tag users and saying, you know, this is a user that is spreading a lot of fake news. You're an economist, Alvin, right? So that might have a risk of driving people away, driving users away, because you're saying you're spreading false information, we don't want that here. So they might leave Facebook. So that's obviously a risk to Facebook as a company, because your interest is obviously also in an economic interest. So where could that go? How far do you think companies like Facebook or Google, how far can they go to actually be sort of gatekeepers of the truth without risking too much of their economical model? Does that make sense?
Thanks, Ulrich. I think economics is an easier subject. Yeah, I mean, I think the first response is that we don't, we are a technology company, and we don't want to be arbiters of truth. I think it's a very, it's a place where we don't want to be. It's dangerous in that regard. Then we cease to be a platform if we arbitrate truth. Even, and we spoke about this during lunch, where we thought also, and we agreed, I think, to a certain degree, that even fact-checking has its limitations. So fact-checkers, and I think that is alluding to Cherian's point earlier on, or the question was, you know, how partisan or how non-aligned can you be? And that is also critical. So you raised the example of Snopes, and I think there was a news about Irish slaves in the US recently, or rather about 7-8 months ago, and Snopes had clarified that story. And then there were people that said that, oh, Snopes is very leftist, right? And so that kind of discredited Snopes as a fact-checking organization. So again, it's a good tool. These are good tools all around, but I think it has to be, we need to approach this as very much more holistically. You know, and I think media literacy is a huge component to that, in concert with all of the existing initiatives that we're already doing. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just gonna sort of support what Alvin has said, in that Google, again, if I post, how many of you would be comfortable with Google telling you what is true and what is not true, and deciding which sources of information like you will see? How many of you would be comfortable with a technology company making that decision for you? I think very few people would feel comfortable with that. I think that, from Google's standpoint, again, the efforts that we're taking are to elevate, information from organizations that have standards. Now, journalism as a profession, we aspire to have standards. We don't always, mistakes are made because journalism is committed by humans, right? And humans are not perfect. And so I think that we have to acknowledge that. I mean, I thought that Martino was really brave in actually talking about something where there was a mistake and they had to make a correction. We're human. And so I think that the key for us from where we stand with Google is let's identify those organizations that seek that higher standard, that seek those those tools and techniques, and let's empower them with those tools. And then create mechanisms where those who are going that extra mile, who are adopting those standards, can then signal to us that they're doing this work. so that we can then inform an algorithm that powers, the search engine, right? And as you mentioned, we are constantly evolving. The truth is that misinformation, as has been discussed, is not a new phenomenon. Technology has enabled it to change, but it's not static. We also are constantly trying to keep up with, everything. Every time you take down a website that's providing misinformation, the same person can just power up their computer and register a new domain name and do the same thing, right? So, we do have to spend time, hitting those moles and trying to suppress, but really, in my mind, the more effective strategy is to empower those with the aspiration for those standards, and then also, make sure that they have the tools available and that we continue to support innovation of those tools, right? I mean, and that's one thing that has been quite interesting, just that, as I mentioned in my talk, is that, citizens, random people who are not being paid to do this work are innovating in incredible ways and coming up with solutions faster than even technology companies are coming up with them. And so that's why it's important for us to keep our ear to the ground and identify those people and make sure that they are also talking to each other, right?
Thank you. I think we've all been working, Alvin and Irene, really hard. So I'm going to allow the next question only if it's coming to this side of the panel. So if anyone has any questions for the Straits Times, Zakir from the Straits Times or Martino from Mothership, put up your hand now. Which one? Okay. Vincent? No. They have nothing to do here, Yeah, let's work them a little bit. Yeah.
Thanks. Actually, this question is it's actually directed to everyone on the panel because you and Zakir have both editors who both have newsroom experience, and this is actually a partially technological question as well. Because if you read yesterday's foreign policy, Nick Diaz wrote an article about how private messaging like WhatsApp, which was acquired by Facebook, is actually the new way of disseminating misinformation and fake news. So he suggested partnering crowdsourcing, which has happened in Colombia, and the representative from Mafindo is also crowdsourced and crowdfunded. But the thing is that fact-checking is still reactive. It's still a reactive thing. You're still playing whack-a-mole. And in fact, because it's on WhatsApp and it's a private messaging, like through WhatsApp, Telegram, it's just going to be, you're speaking in a closed, how do I put it, closed echo chamber. These are all your family members or people of your same social group and whatnot. So this kind of, how do you all foresee combating this kind of misinformation where you can spread, say, a PS, JPEG or fake news through WhatsApp or Telegram? And on top of that, if you all want to combat this kind of thing, it's just going to be even more resource intensive. So like for the editors like Zakir and yourself, Mr. Peh, in this kind of era where you have shrinking newsrooms and like budgets because advertising revenues are declining, which is the traditional moneymaker for news organizations, how do you all foresee like, devoting more resource? Do you all foresee like just wash your hands of this, or are there any other viable solutions to this problem? Thanks.
I thought it's an interesting question because increasingly we're relying on Google tools, right? Google Alerts and other even Facebook feeds or Facebook Live, for instance, right? Increasingly, say we're coping with manpower issues. Facebook Live is a great help, for instance. So sometimes we cover events like this through Facebook Live, which is a great help. But I think one thing we can't let up on is checking on veracity or accuracy of things. And I think even as we fight time pressures to be the first with the news and to put things out fast, verification is still key because that's a key part of who we are. So even last night's Barcelona attack, for instance, right? When do you call it a terror attack? When do you speculate and so on? You've got to rely on trusted news organizations. And increasingly, sometimes I think we have cross-border collaborations. So maybe we have shrinking bureaus. We work with partner agencies in Asia to kind of, bring the news to you. And I think increasingly we might have to work with organizations like Mafindo and all to kind of check the accuracy of news reports.
I think for Mothership, right? For us, we have to be aware of our own limited resources as well. So we have to focus on, I think, what are the type of news and issues that will interest our readers, and our own sense, I think, in the local online landscape is the fact that I think many Singaporeans still trust the mainstream media in providing, I think, news, on a daily basis. But there are times where perhaps, on political issues, there may be different interpretations. So that's when we will devote a lot more resources to cover such news as well. You mentioned about crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is, it's a good idea if we can create, a group of engaged community, to help verify things or topics for issues for us. We have also done that. We reach out to a few engaged readers, but sometimes crowdsourcing is also overrated. In Singapore especially, maybe about 70 to 80% of my readers, texting us on a Facebook private message or info@Mothership are things that I think most media wouldn't cover, right? So we call that, like, you're trying to, I think, name and shame someone, or they have a personal grievance against something. So all these things usually will come up, and we wish, we could have, I think, a more informed community, so that they could, I think, alert us on such more important topics as well. But sometimes I think we're still working towards that. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. Sure.
Chat apps, which I think is really interesting, because I just want to mention one example of a news organization that is specifically working through chat apps to identify hoaxes, to debunk, and to distribute. So the Thai news agency, which is MCOT, they have a television program called Sure and Share. It's really interesting. The host of that show, he has a Line channel, because Line is the most popular messaging app in Thailand, where people forward him articles, photos, things that they've gotten that they are not sure about, and he will actually fact check those from those sources and then answer each person through Line as well. And one of the things that he's done, he has a television program which he then also distributes on YouTube, but the thing that he said has been most effective in terms of distribution of the rebuttal, the actual fact check, is creating infographics, because pictures are easily shared. That's what people like to see. And so he has actually developed a whole methodology about how he makes these infographics to communicate to people what the fact check is. And I think that that's the kind of thing we want to share and make sure more people are hearing about, because because the language of how people process information is completely changing. Not just platforms, but people are more visual, photos. Who would have thought we would communicate with little pictures, like emoticons? So I think that the language of how we communicate is going to evolve and change. And there is an opportunity there as well. I think one of the big challenges that people often talk about is, your auntie and your grandma are the ones who always send the hoaxes and the things that are wrong. But we don't know how to correct them without seeming like a jerk or disrespectful. So how do we evolve the language to allow us to do that without offending people? And I think these are the kinds of questions that hopefully these forums can actually discuss, and that can inform how journalists and others communicate the truth.
Thank you. I'm going to take a question from Carol.
Hi, my question is for Zakir and Martino. Maybe you can jump in as well. So As we look at the kind of literature and studies that have been done on fake news, and for instance, the types of people, the groups of people who are more susceptible to fake news, two things showed up, right? One of which is media diversity. Okay, the diversity of the media ecology. So some findings point to how people in environments where there's greater media diversity are more able to, say, differentiate fake news from real news. That's one. So media diversity is one. Now, the other two, like what, during yesterday's dialogue session with Senior Minister of State, what came up was also the importance of trust, right? Trust in institutions such as government and media companies. So in Singapore, there's always this perceived proximity, say, between mainstream media, Straits Times, and say MediaCorp, with the ruling government, right, the ruling party. So based on these two, media diversity as well as, say, perceived political partisanship, what do you think, say, the Straits Times can do more to, overcome some of these limitations? And Martino, I know earlier you mentioned, you made a point about when it comes to political stories, maybe you'll cover more of that to kind of fill the gap. But I'm just wondering if you have any more specific comments on these 2 points. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. I think that's a tough question, but I think increasingly we have to reflect a wider range of views and commentaries, even if they're quite polarizing or from opposing ends of the spectrum. And I think we've tried to do that. I mean, just to give an example, the recent, the upcoming presidential election, right? And all these debates over race and so on. We try not to kind of, degenerate into how some of the online comments have veered. But I think had there not been these comments or these views, we might not have kind of reported that diversity. But I think there's sort of a certain threshold as well. I think there's certain types of news or certain, if it's, say, clearly going down, an unhealthy, if it takes an unhealthy racial line, for instance, this obsession over a person's race, we decide maybe we'll cut it off here and let that, let's see how it plays out online. We can't not cover it, but I think maybe we have a certain threshold for dealing with it. But I think the other thing is we have to acknowledge that there will be some people who will just not read us, or who will just, don't even, just think we're biased. And I think even as we try to be balanced and reflect a greater diversity of views, I think the reality is there will just be this group of people, and I think that's where things like Mothership, even SGAG, and even Facebook come in. And I think we're just headed that way.
I think it takes some, regarding Carol's question on trust, right? It takes some time, and it takes a while for, I think, for readers and audience to build that trust with a certain website and a certain brand as well. I recall 4 years ago when we first started Mothership, right? The first few calls that I get from my ex-colleagues from the civil service. They'll be asking, what's your agenda? What are you trying to do? So why do you want to create a website that's political? And I think it's only over the years, right? After our I think January election coverage, that's when we start to, I think, build a track record that could help, I think, Singaporeans understand ourselves better. And it's Singapore is a small town, so what happens is, I think, sometimes for new websites, they're always, I think people are always interested to know who are the writers, who are the founders, and with that comes a certain, I think, expectation whether they will be credible or not. Yeah.
Thank you. Edson, right at the back. Sorry to have kept you waiting.
Hi, I have two questions. First one would be for Zakir, and also Martino and Septiaji can jump in if they have similar experiences. I want to focus on the experience of Straits Times with the KFC headline. First, how did you find out about it, and how soon were you able to realize that something was going on? And second, how did the correction that you had to do in terms of reaching the audience, and how easy or difficult it was to actually correct misinformation? Second question would be for Alvin and Irene. I think it's interesting that what Irene asked, whether we're willing to accept Google and to some extent Facebook as arbiters of truth. I think the question is, another question also is whether Facebook, Google, and other tech companies are willing to accept that you have become media companies. If you think of it, curation, aggregation, prioritization of information, these are functions that media companies do. So, two questions.
How did we find out? I think a few chaps started pointing it out online, and then I think there might have been a call from the president's office wondering if it was real. So it took a quick while to do some checks, and I think it was a former colleague who, former colleagues or readers who were more discerning, I think, helped point out that it was fake. And after we did the checks, I think it took an hour, maybe a couple of hours before we, crafted a correction. Well, not crafted a correction because it wasn't a correction, but crafted a statement, and posted it online and shared it to say that this was doctored and so on. And in fact, I'm not sure how wide that went, but I think what helped was people who, when they saw the thing being shared and, commented on, actually stepped in and corrected, sort of the misperception that it was a doctored headline. I think one common perception was, it was an intern or someone fiddling around with the settings on a Saturday afternoon that, decided to get cheeky.
Hello. That's, yeah, I would like to respond also. Actually, I think Carol also did my response also. About the fact-checking efforts, we have a lot of issues. Our nation is currently quite divided after the presidential elections last 2014. Before 2012, actually, there were very few hoaxes in politics or in ethnic religions. But now, the most hoax in Indonesia is politics and ethnic religions. We urge to people that who supports the government or that contrary to the government, they have to use fact to make a critics. And also the government, they have to increase their transparency. For informations, we have already the law. It's called Keterbukaan Informasi Publik, public information openness, so that should be make the trust should be higher, and also for the media. Yeah, we have in the United States we have seen polarization or perhaps some people only watch MSNBC and the other people only watch Fox News. In our country, we have also Metro TV versus TV One. Yeah, we urge the owner of the media to please don't use your media for to be the partisans. Yeah, you have to return your function as a pillar of democracy, independence and neutrality. That's the thing that we have to increase the trust so that people will return to mainstream media and leave rock online websites. I think that's.
So your question about, will Google and Facebook acknowledge that we are media companies because we do certain functions that news organizations have traditionally done, right? What I would say to you is that we do not create news content. Like Google doesn't. We don't have a newsroom. We don't write news stories. And so while, yes, technology has taken some, we do certain things that newsrooms have done in the past, like curation and putting everything in one place that in a way that people access. I would say that that's very different than creating content, right? And so, and the issue that we're talking about when we talk about misinformation is how do we, how do we train the algorithm to do a better job of highlighting high quality information? That is a constant battle. It is a constant process and an education for us to train the algorithm to learn about trusted sites, trusted providers. I mean, if we only focused on legacy media, then news organizations like Mothership and others would have no voice, and that's not right either, right? Because companies are evolving, and just because they're new doesn't mean that they're not high quality.
Saved by the bell. I'll just respond. I'm not gonna, but yeah, I mean, I agree what Irene had mentioned. I think on top of that, we acknowledge our role in the ecosystem. We acknowledge that we are an important stakeholder, and that's why we're here. And that's why we continue to do a lot of, and conduct a lot of initiatives around the region. I think with regards to the journalists and the publisher community, I think both Google and Facebook have been doing a lot, and we really want to partner with this community to do even more. There are trainings available. There are, as I mentioned, the Facebook Journalism Project, where we are going to have a couple of events in the next couple of weeks as well. So if you'd like to find out more, please let us know. There will be also product rollouts where it makes it easier for the publisher community and, is that the end? No? And the journalist community to work together with us to help us to surface more authentic content online.
Can we take one more question? Do we have time? Okay, I mean, since you're the one who's been waving frantically for the past few minutes, so you get to ask the last question.
Okay, I'm Sophia from China. Since the end of last year, there's a news line. In order to go into Chinese market, Facebook is developing a special censorship to meet the Chinese government's censorship. So I would like to know, is that a fake news?
Yeah, well, I cover Southeast Asia. So I'll leave my friends from, thank you.
Sorry, I see a lot of hands, but I'm so sorry. We really don't have time, but we're going to break for tea and stuff like... Are we breaking for tea now? Yeah, so we're going to break for tea, so please feel free to come up to our panelists. They're still going to be around to ask your questions. Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for our wonderful speakers. Thank you very much.